Good morning, everyone. You were talking about suffering, right? Just now. And I was thinking, it's Sunday morning, beautiful out there. We could be on the beach, we could be somewhere else, but we are here to listen to somebody talk about suffering and affliction. That's major in itself. That's the path for transformation. That's how we start. That's our first step towards getting better, towards our evolution. We have in the Spiritist literature, on the basic literature, one of the books, The Gospel According to Spiritism. There's a full chapter about what we're going to talk about today, which is Allan Kardec calls "Blessed are the afflicted." And we go like, that's kind of weird. These two words together. If you look up in the dictionary, blessed, having a sacred nature, sacred of any kind, no names, divinity, just divinity, no names, connection with God. Okay, all right, that's fine. Now, what is afflict or affliction or something within those lines? To cause pain or suffering to somebody or someone. And we go like, how can God or some divinity sort cause suffering? So that's kind of strange. So what we want to do here is go through a lot of thoughts, a lot of thinking, a lot of reflections, and see why this phrase is there and why it makes sense. Okay, so we're going to start bringing up a timeline. This timeline, we're going to put the now moment. The now moment is us here in this room right now. Obviously, this divides time in two. Before the now moment and after this, so that's what we call past and future, of course. Now, this now moment, if we are suffering now for some reason, that's more like an illusion because there is no suffering in the present. Suffering or affliction is not caused now. We are suffering now because of something that took place in the past. It could have been 10 minutes ago out here. It could have been last night. It could have been when I was a child. But it could have been in other past lives. So the now moment is a consequence of all these past moments and all the suffering that we bring up now, or all the affliction that we go through now. They have to do with something in the past. Again, it could be last week or so, or it could be several lives before this one. So what we can say is this: afflictions are echoes of our past actions. If I'm suffering now, it's because I did something in the past. But that's not the worst. The worst is, what is the future made of? It's made of my present. Okay, my present builds up my future. If my present is to suffer because of my past, what is my future going to be like? Suffering because of the same things. If I don't change my way of, if I don't stop this suffering, if I don't cut this somehow, I'm just using my lifetime here just to pass suffering along to the next life, and so and so and so. So the now moment, or this present lifetime, is a lifetime where I have the opportunity to look back in the past and cut everything that brings me suffering by understanding, knowledge, analyzing, and we're going to go through all of this. That's how we start changing ourselves. When we talk about suffering, there are several different kinds of suffering. For example, let's say that I just hit my arm here really hard. I'm going to have some sort of pain in here. And if I go to the doctor, I'll say, "Doctor, I have a pain here." He's going to ask me, "What happened?" I say, "Well, I just hit my arm." And he's going to say, "Oh, can you tell me where it is? Can you show me where it is?" And I can show exactly the exact point where it is. And he's going to give me something, and that's it. And I'm able to tell that point because it's a physical event. It was a physical event. It's at the physical level. I can pinpoint the exact location of that suffering. Now, when we go to a doctor, sometimes we go because we have a pain, let's say over here, and we go to the doctor and he's going to ask me, "What are you feeling?" "Oh, I have a pain over here." "Oh, okay, show me. Where's the pain?" It's in this area. You see, it's getting difficult to pinpoint the exact spot. Now it's no longer a point like here. It's an area. And sometimes we go to the doctor and we just say, "I'm not feeling well." He's going to ask me, "What do you have?" "I'm not feeling well. I'm just not feeling well." And he's going to ask me, "Well, what is it? It's a stomachache? It's a headache? Or what do you have?" "I don't know. I'm just not feeling well." Because I can't pinpoint that. This is exactly what happened when suffering is at the moral level. When suffering is at the physical level, I can pinpoint. When it's in the perispirit, at the moral level, it's in the perispirit. I can pinpoint. It's not a headache. It's not I hit my arm. It's not pulmonary. It's just everything. I just don't feel well. I just don't feel well enough to tell the doctor. And that's because it's in the perispirit. That's the suffering we're talking about here, moral suffering, because I'm chasing actions from the past and bring them back to the now moment. And I need to stop that. I need to cut that sort of fishing from the past. I need to stop the fishing. And why do we suffer? Or why did something in the past that makes me suffer now? The easy answer is because I'm going against the law of God. And can we elaborate a little more? Yes, we can. If we go back in time where we had Moses bringing us the first written revelation, what that does for us is outline a set of moral values that we're supposed to live by. Well, for example, let's pick one just as an example. Don't kill. So it's one of them. But, can you imagine the day Moses came from Mount Sinai and showed us that? That was revolt, because nobody would take that. They were killing people all over the place. It was a common thing. And then suddenly you can't do that anymore. So that generates a little bit of revolt. But anyway, Moses takes that and says, well, in order for me to reinforce this moral value, don't kill, I have to launch a series of laws, man laws, that will support this moral value. So we create, and that still goes in our present society, we create social laws. So for example, the law is don't kill. But the social law is don't kill. If you kill, you're going to go to jail, for example. If you kill, you're going to go to jail is not part of the moral law. It's a man law to accommodate and support that moral value. So as we go living in our society with these laws, with these social laws, we have a certain behavior. So let's say, for example, Andre and I start arguing about something. In the past, it would be very easy. I just take the sword and I resolve the situation very easily in the past. Not anymore, because now I have social laws which is going to take me into a certain behavior. The behavior is I better not do this because I'm going to go against the law, and the law reinforces a moral value. So the whole thing comes from the top down. Moral values generated and still generate social laws, which generates, which forces it into a certain behavior. But the problem is, when the behavior changes and we accept, we got a conflict. For example, let's say you cannot kill. Okay, if you kill, you go to jail. So everybody's okay. Then suddenly I kill somebody, and I'm a very influential person, let's say in my society. So I did kill somebody. In theory, I should go to jail, but because of my position, I'm very influential. I can go to my lawyers and people who, do the law and say, well, we should adjust this, and the law should be, don't kill. If you kill, you're going to go to jail. But if it's your first crime, nothing happens. So you see, the moral value didn't change. The social law still didn't change, but the behavior did. When we all accept that behavior, we make that into a social law. So now the social law includes another item, which is, if it's your first crime, nothing is going to happen to you. So we're coming from the bottom up now. And then we live in a society in which we believe the moral values are the true moral values when they are not. So every time we go from the bottom up, we're going against the law of God. That is what is going against the law of God. Instead of following the moral values down, we try to reach them from where we are. And then the social laws change according to our behavior, and they no longer represent or support the true moral values that were brought to us long time ago. And we go life after life after life living all of this and thinking that we are right, going against the law. Every time I go against the law, I cause some sort of dismantlement of my energy, and this is going to generate some sort of suffering in the future and now. My now is made of my fishing problems in the past. And again, we can't continue doing this, because then my future is going to be what I did in the past, exactly as it is. And we go life after life complaining, not understanding, being revolting, and all of that. And there's a point where we have to make a decision. And all of us have to do this at one point. And there's only two avenues here. Either I take the green avenue, that we call the responsibility avenue. And that's something like this, for example. Well, there's a lot of things that are not right in my life. There's a lot of things that I'm not doing right. I have identified them, so bring them all over here. Put them here on this table, and I'm going to resolve them. It has to do with me. Bring them over here, and I'll take care of that. That's taking responsibility for it. That's going to allow me to evaluate my choices, analyze what I've been doing, what I did, what I will do sometime in the future. It's what I call my process of moral refinement. But this is done by me. Nobody does this. That's when I take responsibility over my past actions and present actions to change my future, to stop fishing. But there's another avenue. It's free will. It's free will. Okay, I can choose another avenue, which is the red avenue, the avenue of victimization, where the situation goes more or less like this. Everything is wrong in my life. Everything, I'm not happy with anything at all. And I think it's your fault. So when I face it this way, my understanding is you guys have done something or a lot of things that put me in this situation. And now, look at me, I'm in this situation. And how do I get out of this situation? Well, you have to undo what you did to put me in this situation. I'm going to wait until you undo what you did. I'm going to wait. And I'm just going to wait. And nothing's going to happen. Because there's going to be a point where I go through a process of revolt so much, that it's going to put me in what I call the moral implosion. Everything dismantles. I can't take this anymore. Moral implosion can take me to suicide, depression, drugs, addictions, and things like this, because I can't take that anymore. You're not doing what you're supposed to do to fix my life, because you've done it to me. That's my thinking. When I go into this victimization avenue, it's very hard, because if I think somebody else has to fix me, I'm waiting for something that we call the Savior. So we're going to wait for the Savior for whatever time I think it's going to happen. But it's not going to happen, because the only way out of it is to switch avenues, is to take another path, go into responsibility, take all the problems in, and yeah, I'm going to work on these problems, one at a time, of course. If we don't do this, we're going to wait for a Savior, and it's going to take a very long time. Okay, so reflecting upon this suffering and getting out of it, we're going to do a little, as you see on the top here, we're going to do a little reflection, undergoing afflictions, getting out of them, okay, which is, I call overcoming afflictions, and then we're going to take a conclusion. So first of all, the Spirit's book has a series of questions that will address suffering and afflictions. We're going to take some of them only. One of them is this: what determines the duration of the sufferings of the guilty? Because if I'm suffering, it would be nice to know, if I'm in victimization mode, it would be nice to know how long I'm going to suffer for. Because if you come to me and say, well, it's another week. Okay, it's another week. And if you tell me it's another 10 lives, wow. But at least I know. It would be nice to know. So Allan Kardec asks that, and here's the answer. The length of time required for the improvement, meaning it depends on me. When I decide to improve, when I decide to get better, when I decide to stop running down the victimization avenue and I switch over to responsibility, that's my choice. That's when I decide. Nobody decides for me. And within the answer, the spirits will say something very interesting here, which is this: it depends on the time it takes to improve itself. To improve itself means no Savior. No Savior. It means responsibility. If I don't take responsibility for what I've done, what I did, what I do, I'm not going to be any better than what I am today. And most likely I'm going to be as bad in the future as I am today. Let's go through this idea of undergoing afflictions, what it is like to be under severe affliction. So we're going to do like analyze under 5 different angles that you see on the left here. First of all, action and reaction. We've seen that this is fishing from the past. I did something in the past that reflects upon today. And that's exactly what Spirit Emmanuel tells us in this book. It's actually a small document called Reasons to Excuse. Those who hurt others definitely don't know what they're doing, since they ignore the responsibilities that it carries into the law of cause and effect. Again, responsibility. I can't do something and wait for a Savior. It's not going to happen. And in the same thought is we are told in the gospel again when the Spirit tells us, Jesus tells us, whoever was killed by the sword shall perish by the sword. I mean, if I did something in the past, something is going to happen to me. Law of action and reaction. Another way of seeing this thing is what I call repeating mistakes. So let's go back in history here. Think about this day. Okay, what is this? Jesus is taken into the palace when Pontius Pilate is waiting for him, and he knows he's not guilty of anything. And then he starts asking questions, and he feels Jesus is not guilty of anything. He just doesn't know how to get out of it. He does not want to lose his power, his position. He's a man of power. He's a man of a certain political placement. He wants to stay in there. So he has this, quote, great idea of calling somebody else that obviously is a known criminal and then present them both to the crowd. And the crowd is going to make a choice. And in his head, the choice is obvious. They're going to choose Barabbas instead of Jesus, and everything is resolved. Well, it quite didn't happen that way. So his idea was I can fix it all, stay in power by doing this, but the result wasn't exactly what he wanted. We know the story. We know the history of this thing. We don't have to go into further details. But think about Pontius Pilate. What is he doing? I want to stay in power. I only want to see my side of the story. I don't want to help really anybody. I want to stay in power. So I'll use resources that I have to stay in power, no matter what the consequences are. Okay, this is an event in our history of humanity. Who has created the history of humanity? Us. In past lives, we created, not necessarily we were one of the 3 people in this event, not necessarily we were in the crowd, but this happens all the time. Now bring this event to your personal history. I'm going to bring this event to my personal history. So that's the Luiz Lima story now. How many times I do this, let's say in a year, where I know the right thing to do and I choose to do wrong. So I'm presented with this that is right and this that is wrong, and I have full knowledge of this being right and this being wrong, and I still choose this. How many times don't we do this in a year, in a week, at times in the same day? Every time I choose this, instead of choosing that, I'm going against the law. There will be suffering. There will be affliction. You see, so this event happened in history because we are that way. We created this. And we create this all the time in our lives, with our family, within our neighborhood, within our business environment, professionally, socially. We create this all the time. Let's take another event in history, this one here, where Pope, quote, what is a pope? A pope is the chief, someone who is a head of the church, whose mission is to take the message of Christ and disseminate this message. So Pope Urban II, in the year of 1096, calls for all the Christians within the Roman Empire to go to Jerusalem and assassinate all the Islamic followers. As a pope. Now bring this event to my history here. Now this is my history. I have been, and we are in general, urban seconds several times in a year when we do things to make somebody else suffer. When we do things that will create difficult situations, or we bring resources to make something difficult for somebody else on purpose. Strategy. How can I make him feel bad? Oh, I got a great idea. We do this several times. We do this in our social environment, professional environment, family, whatever. So that's part of our history of humanity. Why? Because we are that way. It's just us. It's just the way we have been. Here's a third event, the Inquisition. What is the Inquisition? There's a set of rules, a set of dogmas that we were supposed to follow, and if we didn't follow, we would go to fire. We would just die. Now, if you think about this, there's a very interesting expression here in the United States that we go like this: it's my way or no way. That's the Inquisition. That's what the Inquisition is. You either follow my dogma, my rules, my rituals, or you're gonna die. Bring this to your personal history. Every time we take the general attitude of it's my way or no way, we are the great inquisitor. Why did we have Inquisition in the past? Because we are that way. We are that way. Here's another fact of history. Hitler. We don't want to even talk much about this because it's such a sad thing. But anyway, just think about him. In the very beginning, he had a general idea that wasn't really what it turned out to be in the past. But you see, he created things and he attracted resources that turned out to be the disaster that it was in the end. So we do the same thing. Every time we bring resources that will create consequences that we have no idea, we are Hitler. So for example, let's say she's my very good friend, okay? Then I go to somebody else, okay? And I say, oh, you know Andrea, she's this, this, this. And she says, you don't know who she is, she's bad. She doesn't know anything. Now he talks to her, who talks to her, who talks to her, who talks to him, who's a good friend of Andrea, and he comes back to her. And now what do? I'm gonna have to face her with a totally different approach, because I created a war that I had no idea. I just started, speaking things and saying things that I had no idea of the consequences. So we are Hitler all the time. Every time we talk bad about somebody, especially somebody close, within our reach, especially somebody within our reach, every time we do this, we are Hitler. So you see, these are events of history, but there are also events in our personal history. And then we don't want to suffer. It's not possible. It's not possible because we are seeking for suffering. Every time we do one of these things, we are seeking for suffering. We feed suffer in several different ways. Here's one of them: attachment to material goods. Of all belief systems, not religions, belief systems is different, is more. For example, materialism is a belief system. Atheism is a belief system. So of all belief systems, there's only one thing in common to all of them. And you're going to say, is there a thing in common? Yes, there's one thing in common to all of them, which is when I die, my car doesn't go with me, it stays in the garage. My laptop stays on the desk. My shirt stays in the wardrobe. And so we do not take anything material. We know that. Still, we live by material things as if you were going to take them. I mean, we keep feeding the same thing, expecting different results. It's kind of stop and think a little bit, right? It's very hard for us to do this. We have a difficult, hard time doing this. But we need to be aware of it, at least, so we can try. If we don't know, if we're not even aware, it's difficult to try. And here's another one: desire to control somebody else's life. You see, the problem in trying to control somebody else's life is not controlling somebody else's life, is that I'm forgetting to control my own life. And I keep going down, running down, and fast, the victimization mode, instead of going to responsibility, because that's someone else's life, that person's life is their responsibility, not mine. If I'm trying to run their life, I'm in victimization mode because I'm looking for suffering. I'm looking for trouble. And we keep doing these things. We keep feeding suffering. These are just different angles of how we perceive suffering. It looks like we like them in a way because we keep doing the same thing. We keep repeating them. Here's another angle of seeing this thing: the idea of injustice. So everything that doesn't happen, everything that's not within the my way or no way is unjust. That's how we go by. That's what we think. So there's two different things. There's human justice and divine justice. This is another story. That's another hour of things, but let's just quickly go by this. Human justice is based on revenge. You did this, you're going to have that. You're going to do this. If you do, you're going to have that. Divine justice is not based on revenge. It's based on the ability, the level of evolution. Everyone has a different level. Everyone has to go through different things and try again to get better. Human justice is based on somebody's needs. So, for example, think about the Inquisition. There was a need to control power. Within our laws, our social laws, there are needs from people and groups. They establish laws because it's their need, not mine, not necessarily mine. Divine justice is based on equality, not one person's need, not one group's need. Human justice is not universal, and divine justice is. And you go like, can you explain that? Yes, I can. One of the 10 Commandments, don't kill. It was valid 4,000 years ago. It was valid 2,000 years ago. It was valid last week. It's valid now. And in all places. It was valid in Europe. It's valid in China. It's valid in North Miami Beach. You see, those are things that are universal. They transcend time and space. Human justice is not. You're never going to see a judge putting out the following. Well, you're going to spend life in prison because of the crime you committed, and not only this life, but next one. There's no such a thing, because human justice stops with death. So it's very limited. It's very truncated. We don't have a big overview of things. Then we keep making mistakes because justice within a society is written by us. Here's another way of seeing this thing, the willpower that we have. Are we really putting efforts to change? Do we really want to change? Well, Allan Kardec addresses that in the Spirit's book. So here's a nice question for us. This is one of these questions that keeps in the head for years and years and years. It's been on my head too. Could humans always overcome their evil tendencies through their own efforts? Before we can understand the answer, we have to